Presidential debates have been a staple of campaigns for decades, and history has shown that they can have the power to sway undecided voters and solidify public perception of the candidates. In 2024, it was a debate that arguably changed the course of the campaign completely. President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump met on stage in Atlanta on June 27 for the first presidential debate of the 2024 election, which may have ultimately led to Biden ending his bid for re-election. Democrats were shaken when the 81-year-old stumbled his way through the debate, mixing up names and figures, losing his train of thought, failing to parry back against Trump's lies, and struggling to describe his own accomplishments and vision for a second term.
The total initiative relative to what we can do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either.
His disastrous debate performance spurred a dramatic revolt within his own party in the weeks that followed, with top Democrats calling for Biden to step aside. Biden dropped out of the race on July 21st and endorsed his Vice President Kamala Harris to take his place.
I made my choice. I made my views known.
Let's look back at some of the other debates in history that have also moved the needle. The 1960 debate between John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon. The first debate between Kennedy and Nixon is considered one of the most significant because it entrenched the idea that appearances are an important part of presidential campaigns. The debate is also considered the first nationally televised presidential debate in history. The best-known narrative about the debate is that then Vice President Nixon lost the election because he looked old and tired during the debate, while Kennedy, then a senator from Massachusetts, wore makeup and appeared young and vibrant. People who watched the debate on television generally believed that Kennedy had won the debate, but those who listened to their speeches on the radio believed that Nixon had performed better. Now, some historians argue this explanation doesn't hold up because of different demographics between TV viewers and radio listeners, and we have very little empirical research to suggest that's why Kennedy won the election. The 1976 debate between Jimmy Carter and Gerald Ford. After the Nixon-Kennedy election, a long period passed without any general election debates until President Gerald Ford fell behind during the 1976 campaign and decided he needed to debate then Georgia Governor Jimmy Carter. The debates are best remembered for a single moment during the pair's second debate.
There is no Soviet domination of Eastern Europe, and there never will be under a Ford administration.
Could I just follow? Did I understand you to say, sir, that the Russians are not using Eastern Europe as their own sphere of influence and occupying?
Historians argue that the moment was particularly damaging for Ford because of the media reporting after the debate, which contributed to the narrative that he was clumsy and not up for the presidency. The 1980 debate between Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan. For most of the 1980 campaign cycle, Jimmy Carter had been unwilling to debate Ronald Reagan, who was considered a master of visuals and humor. But Carter changed his mind about 10 days before the election after realizing that he was trailing in the polls and needed a last-minute pitch to undecided voters. Carter peppered his rhetoric with facts and policy, and Reagan countered with one-line catchphrases.
Are you better off than you were 4 years ago, Governor? There you go again.
Experts argue that Reagan went on to win the election 1 week later, in part because he came across as very confident and amiable in that debate. The 1992 debate between George H.W. Bush, Bill Clinton, and Ross Perot. Unlike most other presidential debates where candidates respond to moderator questions, the second debate in 1992 was conducted in a more relaxed town hall format suggested by Bill Clinton's campaign. The format was seen as benefiting Clinton, who voters thought seemed more likable than his opponents over the course of 3 debates. In one famous moment during the second debate, President Bush was caught on camera looking at his watch as a voter in Richmond, Virginia asked a question about the national debt, giving viewers the sense he was being passive or bored. The debates also introduced the public to third-party candidate Ross Perot, who garnered almost 19% of the vote. Exit polls suggested that Perot took votes from Clinton and Bush about equally. The 2000 debate between George W. Bush and Al Gore. The debates were particularly important in the 2000 election. Vice President Al Gore had been in high-profile debates before, whereas Texas Governor George Bush was a relative newcomer known to stumble over his words. During the first debate, microphones caught Gore loudly sighing in response to Bush's answers.
In the state of Texas, that's what a governor gets to do.
At the third debate, Gore walked up to Bush as he was speaking, seemingly to intimidate him. Bush smirked and continued on, but the moment prompted the audience to laugh. Time wrote in 2000, the pundits and the polls agreed Gore had won the debate. Then he lost. Within a week, Bush had opened up a lead in several polls as voters apparently decided they were tired of Professor Know-It-All. In 2024, following his debate with Biden, Republican candidate Donald Trump went on to debate Vice President Kamala Harris just once. The race remained deadlocked, and it likely will not go down in the history books as a debate that moved the needle.